After releasing my video on mech games for the NES, I found myself more informed about a few titles I might have missed. My rules were that A, I was focusing on the American NES releases for the video, and B, no games featuring special cases like power suits or magic armor would be included. I thought I had been thorough, spending hours sifting through the entire catalog of North American releases one by one, ensuring I might finally produce a video without any mistakes. Well, I was wrong. Apparently, a title, or maybe two, escaped me. That's okay though, as I don't think I'm personally cut out for list-type videos anyhow. Something always seems to get lost between capturing and writing about a set of games rather than one. So you might consider this somewhat of an extension of that video. If you haven't watched it, please do. I need those precious YouTube pennies. Your likes and subscriptions, they simply sustain me. When it came to Dynowarz, with its spelling almost as hilariously juvenile as the title itself, I think the primary reason I skipped it had more to do with how silly it looked, rather than thinking it might be a game featuring a mech. The cover itself is extremely misleading, failing to illustrate that the primary draw is the alternating levels where the player navigates through facilities on foot and outdoor sections where they punch dinosaurs in a massive dino mech. Instead, it shows a vaguely robotic character shooting a dinosaur. Seeing that and the title, how was I to know Dynowarz was a mech game at all? So thank you to those who understand where I'm coming from with that. As for the Nintendo stands, I really don't even know why I'm bothering to explain myself. So what is this mech game that I'm reviewing, right on the cusp of me being almost entirely burnt out on the subject? Well, it's a Nintendo game published by Bandai, and that's probably the most interesting part about it. Dynowarz was, rightfully so, received negatively back in its day. Sure, there are going to be a handful of people who enjoyed it. You might be one of them, and Lord knows I probably would have as a kid. But beyond its idea, the game wasn't anything to write home about. The developers over at Advanced Communication Company, which has to be the most non-game development studio name I've ever heard in my life, basically created a middling shooter platformer and pasted an interesting concept over it. The entirety of the game consists of walking either right or left and accomplishing the same set of tasks repeatedly. On foot, players shoot flying slime creatures, turrets, and the same sub-boss in a tube over and over again. As the Cybosaurus, and yes, that is exactly what it's called in the manual, levels consist of walking to the right, punching, and shooting dinosaurs until reaching a boss. These bosses have only 3 actual variants: a T-Rex, a Triceratops, and a Brontosaurus. I couldn't tell you why, but the Brontosaurus is probably the most interesting enemy in the game. None of these really pose any sort of threat in either section type. The biggest obstacle in the game is the pitfalls, where players are subject to the game's stiff yet floaty jumping. And no, a game being easy doesn't make it unenjoyable or less fun in any way, but the combat here doesn't exactly lend itself to an interesting experience either. Much like jumping, firing feels stiff and a little bit delayed. Weapons, aside from the fireball and beam, don't seem to have any sensible use. This is especially true for the fist punch, which fires in one of the oddest patterns I've ever seen in a Nintendo game, and the bomb, which launches in a just too wide arc. All of these can be upgraded, usually allowing for more projectiles to be fired at once, but due to how the power-ups are tied to certain enemies, getting what you want takes a bit of conscious effort. On foot, the player only gets a spread shotgun with a few upgrades, yet they often drop from enemies floating over pits. This makes them extremely easy to lose, which is a serious issue. Along with the fact that no matter how many I'd collected, it didn't seem to make any actual difference in firing or power. Enemies don't always seem to know how to handle being hit either. Sometimes they flat out just sit around taking fire without a care. In an era where barely animated 2D sprites were the norm, Dynowarz somehow did less. I suppose the most positive feature of Dynowarz is that it allows a level to be restarted as long as the console isn't reset. There is a password system, but it's perfectly possible to play through the entire game simply by continuing after dying. It won't take you that long either, as the game only lasts a little over an hour. That little bit of time, however, won't be well spent on a title like this, unless you're hopelessly unable to accept that not every NES title is great. And trust me, I'm waiting for those comments. I know I'm going to get them. Regarding graphics, you're getting exactly what you're seeing on screen. As I mentioned, there isn't much variation here. A whole lot of palette swaps paired with uninspired enemy design. Levels are bare, bottom-of-the-barrel designs with only minor environmental flares to set them apart. That is, unless you're on foot in a facility, where nothing really changes aside from length. There isn't even a change in color, it's nearly the same thing repeated 7 times. The sound and music are underwhelming to say the least. Somehow, there were 3 composers here, yet together they managed to put together a truly meandering set of sounds. It's not that it's so bad that it's barely music. I've heard some genuinely hideous noise passed off as music on the NES, but this invokes a sense of slowly plodding along. And look, I know you're thinking my indifferent attitude towards this game might be due to the dinosaurs being the main visual draw. Admittedly, maybe that's part of it. I lived through the dinosaur hype, devouring everything Jurassic Park and Power Rangers I could. You know, before discovering that, hey, mostly everything we're told about dinosaurs is completely wrong anyways. Carnosaur was the movie that made me realize that good guys don't always win, giving me weeks of nightmares as I realized that, yes, I was mortal. But I can also tell you that I tried my best to separate that ancient fatigue from my Dynowarz experience. Trust me, I placed it far into the back of my mind, I really did, but there just wasn't any saving this game. The paint job doesn't factor into anything here because the core of Dynowarz feels absolutely hollow. And oh yeah, don't think I'm not going to give you the manual storyline just to explain the game's odd subtitle. So here we go. Something was terribly wrong in the distant man-made spondylus solar system. One by one, the planet's central life support computers had been infected with a life-threatening virus, while the planet's surface had been overrun with giant computerized dinosaurs known as robosaurs. Under attack in his laboratory on Alpha Planet, Professor Proteus, the mastermind of the spondylus system and the founder of the Robosaur project, suddenly realized that this deadly sabotage could only be the work of his former partner, the deranged Dr. Brainius. Years later, the Doctor had fled Alpha Planet after Professor Proteus had exposed him for performing forbidden robotic experiments on human subjects. At last, he had returned to seek his revenge using the Professor's own creations. But little did he realize that Proteus had been hard at work for the past few years perfecting the ultimate Robosaur, Cyborosaurus. There was only one hope to save the spondylus system. Cyborosaurus must be unleashed. The Dinowarz must begin. Do I really need to say more? Have you played Dynowarz? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Or was it simply somewhere in between? If you haven't, are you? Or are you going to give this one a pass? Let me know in the comments below. This has been Kei-Nova, and I'll see you in the next one.